My name is Efrain Peña. I am the campus pastor here. It is truly an honor to have you with us on this beautiful, beautiful Sunday morning. We're excited you are here worshiping with us and just an opportunity to fellowship and hang out with us. My heart and my prayer is that God would grab a hold of your heart today and take you on an inspiring and encouraging journey that you will leave here differently than how you came in, a little more enlightened, a little more loved on by the people here at South Hills. So enjoy this message that we have prepared for you today. We are in this series titled Trust Issues, and we've been talking about trust and the importance of having trust in our relationships. And I think that I think if we're honest in this room, I think we would all say that we've experienced some difficulties in trust, whether it's something recent, whether it's something from the past, whether it's something major, something small. It all comes down to trust issues in our relationship. And so today we're going to dive into the process of repairing trust. I think, again, if we're honest, I think we can admit that there's been some trust issues in our relationship. Trust has been broken at some point. And so let me start off by asking you this. Has anyone ever lied to you? It broke your trust. Has anyone ever gossiped about you? It broke your trust. Has anyone betrayed you? It broke your trust. Has anyone ever stole from you? It broke your trust. Has anyone ever cheated on you? It broke your trust. And I think at one of those categories, each and every single one of us can fall in. And maybe they didn't do it just once. Maybe there's been a pattern, a long history of it. And it's like, can you trust them again? And I know that sounds absurd. That sounds like crazy. Just to even thought of trusting them again. You don't even know. You don't even know how to stop obsessing over what they did. It bothers you. It irritates you. The thought of just thinking about them. To see their faces like, ugh. And if it's at that level, then how can you actually forgive them? Let alone trust them again, please. If it all feels impossible, maybe the words of Jesus would resonate with you when he says in John chapter 2, but Jesus didn't trust them because he knew all about people, for he knew what was in each person's heart. Jesus knew what was in each person's heart. Ever feel like that? Ever feel like that? Like, man, I just don't trust you. Not anymore. I know all about you, right? I know what's in your heart. And because I do, I can't trust you. And that's the part that's different between us and God. You see, we don't really know what's going on the inside of another person. We think we do. In fact, if we were gambling people, we would probably put some money down. Like, yeah, I know what's going on in their heart. I know how they're feeling. But the truth is that we don't know. We don't have access to other people's motives, just their actions, just what we've seen them do. And you're right, with some people, you really cannot afford to trust again. I get that. But some people deserve a second chance. The question is, how do you figure out which people are in which category? Because when someone has really hurt you, trusting again is more than a decision. It's a dilemma, right? It's a choice between equally unfavorable options. You feel like, man, there's no win in this. If I choose to trust them, I'm putting myself in a vulnerable position. And if I choose not to trust them, then what if this relationship that I have with this person that I valued so much is no longer available? So what do you do? What do you do? Now, church, I don't always know how to answer that question, because the real answer is it depends. Ever seen that emoji? It depends. It really depends. It's crazy to think that any of us can just shut off our feelings and start unconditionally trusting again someone who deeply wounded us. You see, trusting again isn't a switch that you flip on, right? But a process that you have to work through. And part of that process is figuring out if it's even something that you should do, that you want to do. Someone has hurt you, and immediately you want to be like, man, should I trust them? Should I not? Well, do I want to? Do I want to? And so, what's the process? If someone comes to you and says, man, I want to work on our relationship, on our friendship, on our marriage, on our job camaraderie, right? Will you be able to trust me again? Will you be able to trust me again? And so how do you go about that? How do you go about doing that? What processes do you follow? And this morning, I want to share some of these things with you in hopes that it would enlighten you and it would help you in your relationships. The first step that I would suggest, right, or that I've researched and that we would, that I think we should all be doing in this step-by-step moving forward, right, and building, restoring relationships or the trust, is we need to recover. That's the first step. Recover. Actively heal from what has happened to you. Recover, right? If you break your leg, you don't go back to running tomorrow. That's just not how it works, right? And if someone breaks your heart, you just don't go back to trusting them again tomorrow. Does that make sense? Right? In fact, if you treat something that's broken as if it's not, more often than not, you're going to make it worse. If you pretend that it did not happen, that it doesn't exist, if you try to sweep it under the rug, guess what's going to happen? You're going to trip and hurt more. This is why they pull players out of games when they get injured. Even though they want to. They don't want to get pulled out. They want to be in it. But they pull them out. They pull them out. Because if they don't, they might live through that game, but they could also potentially destroy their career. Physical and relational rehab follows the same basic principles. They both take time. They both take effort. Nothing heals by itself over time. I'll say that again. Nothing heals by itself over time, and you can put all of your effort, time, and energy you want into one day, and it's still not be enough to restore that relationship. Think of how a physical therapist would help in the recovery process or in the rehab process of a broken leg, right? It's a process, right? You get x-rays, you get some meds for the pain, they reset it, and they cast it. They'll tell you to stay off of it for some time, right, while it heals. Then they'll start asking you to make some movements to rebuild that strength, all of which will be painful, right? And then you start to slowly climb out of that and potentially get to reach an optimal health, right? Back to full capacity. Friends, you build relational trust the same way. Hebrews 12:13 says, have a plan to rehab, to get better and stronger, right? The Word of God is talking about in restoration process, right? Have a plan so that you can be better than it was before, right? Proverbs 17:9 says, let go of the past. Let go of the past, right? To move on, you've got to get to the place where you're not dwelling on what they did, replaying it over and over and getting angry about every single time that their name comes across, that their name comes up. But the truth is that there is more to the story. There's more to the story than they are that says they're just pure evil. They're the worst person in the world. I think there's more to the story. Now, hear me out. This doesn't excuse what they did, but a great question to ask yourself that will bring wisdom and insight to this level of compassion is, what happened to hurt them that caused them to do what they did to you? Maybe something happened to them. And so their approach or their outcome or their POV in life has been somewhat tweaked and altered, and that have caused them to act and do these things. And to get there, you're going to need help, which is why the first step ought to be connecting with people that you feel safe around with, and you feel supported by. Maybe close friends, a therapist, couples counseling, mentors, a small group. Find people to help you step back, take a break, to vent, to process, to pray, to do the difficult inner work, right? To encourage you, to confront you, to laugh with you, to celebrate, to eat pizza and ice cream with. Thank you. When are we going to do that? We need to allow this process to take as long as it takes. Don't feel rushed by it. Don't feel rushed by it. If your supporters are emotionally healthy, they'll be able to signal to you when it's time to move to the next step. Step number 2 is to forgive. Let go of your anger and determine that they don't owe you anymore. Let go of your anger and determine to yourself and be determined that they don't owe you anymore. Nobody wants to do this part. Nobody. Why? Because it's difficult. Right? When someone has fallen short of our expectations in a relationship or broken our trust, our gut instinct is to react back in a mean way, to lash out and make them pay. Now hear me out. That initial anger is actually healthy. It's actually healthy. It's telling you that something is wrong and it needs to be addressed right now. And I want to encourage you this morning to do not ignore it. You have to name what they did wrong and what it cost you. The more specific you are, the more healing it will be for you. You want to burn through your anger by fully feeling it and processing it so that then you can let go of it. And not by acting out on it, but by talking it out. A lot of people don't want to talk about things. They want to keep it locked up inside. I've never seen it work. I've never seen it work where you keep your feelings and emotions and don't express how someone has hurt you. And pretend like it didn't exist, it didn't happen. It never works because there's something that's always going to trip you up. This process will not be nice. This process will not be neat. And it won't completely remove the pain, unfortunately. But it is part of the process of moving forward and restoring trust. But until you forgive them, you will never be free. You will never be free. It's not a gift. Listen to this. It's not just a gift you are giving them, but a gift that you're giving yourself. that you're giving yourself. Because when you carry around that weight, when you carry around that unforgiveness, it makes you a slave to the person who hurt you. It makes you a slave to the person who hurt you, and it will slow you, turn you into an angry elf. In other words, it will slowly turn you into a bitter, vengeful person because you are not free. And you're not free because you did not forgive them. If you don't forgive the people in your past, you're going to sabotage your own future, friends. That has to happen. And forgiveness is not a one and done kind of thing. It's not a one and done kind of thing because there are going to be moments where it comes back up, where it rears its head out. I'm here. Right? It's going to come back up, and you're going to have to actively choose to let it go again. How many times are you going to have to do that? Well, somebody asked Jesus that question, and he responded in Matthew 18, 70 times 7. You haven't done the math yet, shame on you, but that's 490. Many of us have understood this like, man, people will do 490 things against me, and I have to forgive each and every single one of them. But the idea that Scripture is using here is that they may do one bad thing to us, and it may take an infinite number of times to forgive them. Listen, forgiveness says and means, man, I'm going to cancel the debt. I'm going to cancel the debt that I have against you. I'm letting you off the hook. I forgive you. And here's the thing. This is what's going to rock your boat here this morning. The other person does not have to be sorry in order for you to forgive them. I'm a little emotional. I am. I'm Puerto Rican. Sorry. Not sorry. Right? The other person does not have to be sorry in order for you to forgive them, because forgiveness requires nothing from them. Forgiveness requires nothing from them. Reconciliation, restoration will, but not forgiveness. But we're not there yet at the restoration part. Romans 5:10 says, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were still sinners, right? Meaning that we were not sorry for what we did, and we were still doing it, and yet before Jesus died, he said, it is finished. It is finished, which means it is paid in full, right? In other words, this thing is in the past, and I am not going to hold it against you in the future. That's what forgiveness is. But I want to be very clear here this morning that forgiveness has to do with letting go of the past, and trust has to do with how we operate in the future. In other words, I want to give permission for you to say, to give forgiveness out. You see, I can fully forgive you and still not trust you. Right? You're forgiving them for the past. Trust is what comes ahead. Because again, forgiveness is free. Trust is earned. Right? That's what we started in week 1. Forgiveness only takes one person. Forgiveness only takes one person, but trust takes 2. Does that make sense? So how do we know how do you know if you're ready to trust again? And if they can be trusted? Well, that leads us to step number 3. Which is evaluate. Determine what you really want and if it's possible. So now that you're restored, now that you are forgiven, now you're at this point of let's prep for what lies ahead. Can they be trusted again? Right? In order to do that, you have to evaluate. And there are 2 important questions that you have to ask yourself. And the first one is, what do I want? And number 2, what am I dealing with? What do I want? And what am I dealing, or who am I dealing with? In other words, given these circumstances, do I want to move forward with this person? And what would that look like moving forward? You're going to have to get past your initial answer, which is, I want for it to not have happened. You're going to have to get past that. Because it happened. It happened. Someone broke your trust. Someone damaged your relationship. Someone did something to hurt you. And you can't sit there. You can't sit there and say, I wish it didn't happen. Because it did. So restore, forgive, and evaluate. A more helpful approach is to genuinely meditate on, are there good reasons to pursue rebuilding this relationship? Are there things worth fighting for? Is this relationship truly salvageable, right? What would it be? What would it cost me to walk away from this relationship right here and right now? You see, it's helpful to do this with other level-headed people around you who aren't emotionally charged by the situation to help you consider all of the factors instead of being binded by that one offense. In other words, you need to be around other people that are not biased to just you, that understand, will take the entire situation that has transpired and give wisdom and insight, support and encouragement, and help you see things for what they are. And not all get all hurt, right? Because sometimes we tend to run to a group of people like, this one did this to me, and they'll be like, oh, that person is horrible. And yet you're sitting in there with them, and they're not helping you kind of evaluate the situation. By the way, you know that you haven't forgiven someone when you're willing to completely blow up your own life. When you're willing to completely blow up your own life just to punish them. You haven't let go. You haven't really given them. And if that's where you are today, then you need to go back to step 2. You can't jump into step 3. You may not be able to move forward. Here's the reality. You may not be able to move forward with everyone. That's just the way it is. It started off beautiful. It started off right. It was incredible. You found the love of your life. You found your BFF. You found the best co-workers in the world. Truth is, you may not be able to restore that, to get back to that, right? And that's okay. And that's okay. You always have the option to say, man, listen, I forgive you. I really do. I wish you well. But I have no desire for an ongoing relationship with you. I have no desire to work here anymore. I don't have any desire or want to be in partnership with you, to be part of this organization. Ecclesiastes 3:5 says there's a time to embrace and there's a time to turn away. So now that you've answered the question, what do I want? The second question is, who am I dealing with, right? Because trust requires, what we said, two people, right? Trust requires two people, and moving forward with them requires, now listen up, this is super important, because it requires them to be willing participants in this. They gotta want to invest and reinvest and work at this relationship, right? If the other person cannot see their own part in this, admit that they're wrong and sincerely apologize and make adjustments to their behavior that caused you not to trust them in the first place, then you cannot be reconciled with them. Because now you're back to only one person wanting to work at this. It's never going to work when only one person wants to, when only one person admits fault or wants to invest in this. If the other person doesn't want to, they can't force them. And that relationship may not ever get back to what it was. The Bible divides people into three categories based on their reactions to when you confront them. Think about the last time you confronted someone when they hurt you, right? They did something that hurt you, broke the trust. Think about the reactions to that, of how they replied back to you when you confronted them, right? The Bible talks about this. It says that there's the wise person. Proverbs 9, verse 8 says that correct the wise and they will love you. In other words, the wise person says, man, I messed up. Man, it's my fault. How can I figure this out? How can we work at this? They'll say, man, you're absolutely right. It was me. I need to do better, be better, right? That's what the Bible says the wise person would do. But then the Bible also says there's the fool. And the fool says in Proverbs 9, verse 7, says, fools hate correction. In other words, me? How could I? If that's what you think, that's not what happened, but okay, that's what you think. Maybe I did that. And then the Bible also talks about the evildoer. The evildoer, Proverbs 9, 7b says, if you correct the wicked, you will get hurt. And this is the person that will turn around and kind of slap you on top of the pain that you're going through. Push the knife in a little deeper. Do things that be like, oh, that's the way they're going to treat me. Oh, I guess they don't want to be my friend. Hello, you made the mistake. And yet you're still going to try to make that other person feel bad. Friends, can I tell you that I've been the one that have done the hurting? So none of this is out of the blue. None of this, I'm making this up. Once you establish what you want and who you're dealing with, you can begin to reevaluate if they have the essentials necessary for you to begin to extend trust again in small doses. You don't right away give them the full cake. Give them a little, not even a slither. You give them a little piece. Ever had a little piece of them and you're like trying to savor it? I need a little bit more. When people hurt you, you got to give them just a little bit. The same 5 things that we talked about in week 2 that are essential to establish a trust are the same things that we need to implement to reestablish trust, understanding, motive, ability, character, and track record. And once you've done all of that, then you can move to the last step, so that's step 4, which is experiment. Give them opportunities to prove that they're trustworthy incrementally, right? Trust, I said this before, trust is built on baby steps. Often, the other person wants to take big steps, right? They want to get back immediately to what it was, right out of the gate. But I want to tell you that that's not a smart thing to do. Jesus suggests in Matthew 25, right? Be faithful in the little so that then you can be faithful in the much. Right? Be faithful in the little. In other words, don't let them back in your circle of trust unless they've proven trustworthy in the small things. Things like checking in. Hey, how's it going? How you doing? How's your day going? What you got planned? Small conversations. Right? Small conversations. Things like that. You gotta crawl before you walk. There has to be a structured plan, friends. Little steps leading into bigger steps. You see, without a structured plan, rebuilding trust is really just a wish. It's really just a wish. Everyone involved needs to be able to identify that there are new skills being built, right? That the person who broke the trust and the person who broke the trust is starting to implement new things that, man, I need to work on myself to be a better friend, a better spouse, a better boyfriend or girlfriend, a better coworker, right? A better neighbor, a better colleague, right? These are the steps that I'm doing to be there. And you on the opposite side of that need to see that these small steps are playing out. That new interactions and experiences are being had that are directly addressing the area of trust that was broken. Submitting to this is incredibly humbling. It is. It requires you to silence your ego. Or as Jesus says, to die to yourself. Die to yourself. And if you leave with anything, I want you to leave with this morning, and that is that repairing a breach of trust requires both parties to want it, to work for it, to seek help and demonstrate reliability over time. We live in an era where people just want to be like, oh, let's just go back to what it was before. I don't think that can happen. I don't think that can happen unless these steps have been taken. If the goal of Christianity is to align our lives with the words and the ways of Jesus, what did rebuilding trust look like in Jesus' life? Because he definitely experienced his share of trust issues, his share of betrayal. One of the most famous examples in the Word of God is with his friend Peter. It's with his friend Peter, right? Peter denied him several times. Peter denies him knowing him. Peter denies knowing him. I mean, he was on trial for the crimes he didn't commit. And I think it's heartbreaking to think about it. Someone that you thought that you could trust, depend on, rely on, right? Is now pretending to not know you in their most needed time. I wonder if I were Jesus, what would be my response? Dude, you denied me. You're dead to me. Be gone. You no longer exist. But what we find is that God graciously extends forgiveness, reconciliation, and opportunities to rebuild trust with those who'd hurt him the most. Jesus, after dying and resurrecting, shows up on a beach near where a few of his former disciples were fishing. They all sort of kind of walked away from him. They'd all betrayed him on various levels. And the first thing that he does after he dies, he performs a miracle that benefits them. Not typically what I feel like doing to people when they hurt me. Oh, let me help you out. You hurt me. Let me help you out. Which tells us that Jesus had done the first two steps already. He had recovered and he had forgiven them. He didn't just trust them yet, but he had no more anger towards them. And he truly wanted what was best for them. And so after the miracle, a couple of the disciples realized that the guy on the other side of the shore is Jesus. Honestly, that would have made me sick to my stomach. That the person that I hurt, the person that I denied, the person that I broke their trust is there. I'm glad that they're alive, but how am I going to face them now, knowing that I did what I did? I might have pretended like I didn't see them. Right? But no, Peter dives into the water and swims as fast as he can towards Jesus. And when he gets to the shore, Jesus makes everyone breakfast. Look at Jesus feeding people. And he serves the people who'd hurt him. And I have to imagine that the whole time Jesus is doing step 3 in his head. He's evaluating whether or not he wants to extend trust to Peter and whether that's something that Peter wants and can handle. Then the Bible goes on to describe what happens next in John chapter 21, 15 to 17. It says, after breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, Peter replied. You know that I love you. Then feed my lambs, Jesus told him. Verse 16, then Jesus repeated the question, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter said, you know I love you. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus said. Verse 17, a third time he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter now was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said, then feed my sheep. Jesus had always seen love as an action, not a feeling. Peter had heard Jesus teach this many, many times before. And in verse 15, right, John 14, 15 says, if you love me, keep my commandments. In this scene with Peter, Jesus is essentially saying, man, I know you say you love me. I know you say you love me, but I need you to show me that you love me, because trust has been broken between us. You're going to have to establish a new track record. That is what I need to see from you, a new track record. Jesus uses a metaphor to explain what he's looking for. And I would suggest being more specific with the people in your life if you want them to understand what you mean and take action steps. I'm going to wrap this up this morning. Some of you may be wondering why Jesus asked them 3 times. It takes us many times or more acts to rebuild trust than it did to break it. In other words, if I have a track record of 2 days, it doesn't make up for 5 years of bad behavior. Does that make sense? What I find interesting is that Peter's hurt by this. Peter's like, I'm offended that you would ask me 3 times. When we are the one who is trying to rebuild trust, we hate how long it takes for someone to trust us again. We hate it. But again, I remind you, that's the process. That's the process. Like I said earlier, you're going to have to be okay with people questioning you, checking in on you, asking you for proof. You want this relationship to be restored. That you want to work and put in the necessary energy and effort to restore this relationship. Because the reality is, friends, rebuilding trust isn't possible without humility on both sides. You cannot side with your pride and repair the relationship at the same time. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. The question is, are you ready to humble yourself to begin the process of putting that relationship back together? Because the truth is, you don't have to. You don't have to be. But it's definitely the question that you must start with. So here's the homework for this week. Identify someone that you'd like to rebuild your trust with, and ask them what they would need to see from you in order to grow their trust in you. In other words, you're going to have to put on your big boy pants. Seek the person that you hurt and say, hey, listen, I know I hurt you. I hurt you. And I'm sorry I did. But what are the things that I need to do in order to show you that I'm going to be a willing participant? That I understand that it takes two people to restore this trust. That I love you. And that I want our friendship to be that friendship. It may not be today. It may not happen overnight. And I understand that. I'm going to have to take small little steps. Maybe we can start off by grabbing a cup of coffee. Maybe we can watch a show together. Maybe we can work on a project together. Maybe we can go fishing together. I don't know. Start somewhere small. Maybe we can go out on a date. Because I know there are some relationships here that you haven't been on a date in a long time. You're just letting the clock tick. You're sweeping things under the rug, thinking that somehow, some way, Jesus is going to do a miracle and is going to perform it. I want to remind you that we need to be faithful in a little so that he can give us more. I started this morning in our group huddle and saying that today's message was going to be hard to listen to because it was going to make us reflect and say, man, I got to own up to my mistakes. Or, man, I've been holding on to something for so long that thinking that I was hurting someone else when in fact I was hurting myself. And I can't find myself any freedom from that. Friends, in order for us to live the life that God has truly created us to live, he's created us to live an incredible life. We're going to have to take his word and begin to apply it. Live that out. That makes sense? Yes? Yes.
South Hills Church, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for watching our service online. Whether you're watching it for the first time or you're watching it again because you enjoyed the service so much from the weekend, I'd like to take a moment and dive into our giving. Every week we give people the opportunity to give back and give to the local church so that God can continue to bless your lives and bless your finances. Here at South Hills, we believe that everything comes from God. We believe that he's the one that chose us and brought us into this world, gave us our gifts and talents and abilities. And I just want you to know that when we give, we are giving back what God has already given to us. If you've ever seen any of our envelopes at a South Hills campus, you'll see on there that it says, every week at South Hills, your generosity is giving people the opportunity to live a better story. And there's a scripture on there in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21 that says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I want to encourage you today to click down below and set up your giving, whether it's for the first time or whether you're doing reoccurring giving. We have 4 ways to give here at South Hills. 1, you can do it in person at any of our campuses through an envelope. Or 2, you can actually text text any amount that you would like to 84321. And the third way is to download our Church Center app. I encourage you to do this one because the Church Center app gives you opportunity to stay connected with our church and your campuses. It's a great tool and resource for you to know what's going on. And the fourth way to give is to give online. You can go to southhills.org/give and you can set up your giving there. Whether you're a guest of our church or whether you are a member of our church, whether you simply just like to watch our services, I encourage you to trust God with your finances so that He can bless and anoint your finances and you can be trusting God in this journey of living life to the fullest. I love you and thank you for watching our online service today.